What I find is that scripting creates a toolbox, and for the most part, what I've done over the last few years is created a toolbox myself. And my first book that I wrote was 101 ACL Applications, and that actually was called 101 ACL Applications, a toolkit for today's auditors. So, even starting back about 15 years ago when that came out, we also, had a lot of vision and thought as to utilizing those types of scripts at the time as well. And when we think about what are you going to use scripting for the most part, it's for routine tasks. And what I find is that it's great for any sort of periodic audit steps that you might need to complete. It's great for any sort of assisting in kind of bringing in similar data, so that if what I get a lot of times is I'll get many data files, and for those many data files I need to essentially you know import each one at a time, but it's so hard, I think, and boring to do that in a manual way. What I found is sometimes you get about 50 of them at a time, and it's just so much easier and better to just simply say we're going to, upload or open up each one of them in a script, extract the record to a merged file, and then bring them all together. So we will be talking about how you can turn your routine tasks into scripts. What I also think, though, back to the toolbox thought, is that you build quality in once. So as opposed to, kind of like the Ronco commercial out there, you set it and forget it. And in a lot of ways, you can really set and forget your ACL scripts once you've built them. I would say tested them, reviewed them, make sure that they work properly, and then you could set it and forget it. What I find is I build scripts that have hundreds of steps within them. However, you build the quality in once and then you set it and forget it. What I also like about it is, there was a value in learning ACL for DOS in my early years, in that you start to understand what's going on behind the scenes of ACL by reading the code. And the code is not that hard to read. You can actually understand how ACL works and what variables are, and why do I need this word unmatched in there, and what is this and what is that. It's all kind of part of the script language of ACL, because bottom line, whenever you're using the toolboxes and other types, or excuse me, the dialog boxes of ACL, the wizards, in the background, all it's doing is writing that code for you based on your user input into those dialog boxes. First off, what I'd say is in your log file, you could, we're kind of starting off a log file that's pretty clean, but I'm just going to delete everything and just start over. What I like to do is to right click and say add a new session. And we could call this the 2-minute script. Okay. And with that 2-minute script set up there, let me just close this, sorry, so that we have everything. And then what I'll do is I'm actually going to close that general ledger table, so I'm at a blank page here. And then we're going to take a look at the tools menu where you could say set script recorder on. Now, that script recorder is currently running, and we're able to you notice it has the set learn on here, so we see that in the log. What I'm going to do is first go over to my paid file, and I'm going to open up the paid file. Now, just go back to the log here. I'll show you. Look, it says open paid file. So we don't have to, sit here and track every step, but it's just kind of interesting. Then I'm going to run statistics, and I'm just going to run it on the check amount field first, just to kind of keep this very simple. Now, once I've done that, let me go kind of to let me show you this. If I go to edit and then go down to variables at that point, notice that there are a lot of statistics that come out, and actually, notice here, these statistics here, 4526.42 is the positive, 4444.23 is the average value of all 729 records. Notice this variable, average 1, double click on that, 4444.23. So ACL saves to the edit variables section a host of variables that you can utilize later in your scripts, and we'll talk about that in a second here. So then the next thing I want to do now that I've run the statistic command is I'm going to stratify my data, and I'll also do it on stratify on check amount, subtotal check amount. Not trying to make this a class of how to run all these commands. We have other courses and videos on that, but just trying to quickly run some things so that you could see it. And I'll hit OK. And notice we have the stratify command already now completed. Now the next thing I'm going to do, just again, one more thing, is I'm going to say extract data, and we'll say extract record if, and I'll just kind of open up these fields so you could see it. In here somewhere is the check amount. There we go. Check amount is greater than, and I'm just going to put in here average 1. So that's that variable we just talked about. I'll hit the verify command. It's valid. Okay, good. And I'll call this, I guess above average checks, or actually they're invoice payments. Okay, so we have now check amount greater than that variable 4444.23 above average invoices. And notice we had 729 records before, now we have 175. I'm going to go back to my paid file, and I'll do this one more time. I'm going to do an extract if check amount is greater than, now I'll get a little crazy, I'll go 2 times average 1, and we'll do this to a file called 2 times. Actually, I'm going to do times 2 above average invoices. And now we have about 119 records that are above 2 times that 4444.23. So again, just looking here, let me make this a little bit bigger so you could see it, but just change my font using that this font icon here. Notice how everything is greater than about $8,900, and notice everything there is. So that's great. Okay, so that worked. And that's probably good enough for today. It was at least 2 minutes. I have all this code in here now. Now it's a little confusing in my opinion, but you go back to tools and you say set script recorder, hey, where's the off button? And you actually hit the on button again. So it's you hit it twice, and now you're going to save the script as 2-minute script, and I'll call it class. I already had one set up, so I didn't want to overwrite the one that I already had. And now instantly we have this 2-minute script class, which I'll put up here. I'll delete this old one because it's just annoying us. And now we have that one here. So let's open that up, and notice all of the commands that we had in our log file are now here. So let's take a look at what we have here, the open paid file. I like to kind of open this up a little bit. We're going to talk about other best practices to include here, but I wanted to just give you some basic best practices to start out with. One thing that you probably want to start out with is add set safety off to the beginning and set safety on to the end. And if you didn't do that, every time it's trying to extract a record to a file, it's going to, kind of bark at you and say, do you want to overwrite this file? And because that's a bit annoying, we're going to set the safety off so that does not bother you anymore. The other thing we could do is also put delete all OK. And what that'll do is it'll delete all of those variables that we saw in the edit variables section. But now the delete all OK I put at the beginning and the end. And that way, just kind of, it's sort of record keeping or cleanliness or whatever you want to call it as we go along in the scripting itself. And the last thing I would do is I would add, and we'll talk more about this later, but I'm just going to add a simple comment and say, this is the 2-minute script we recorded, and I probably would put 6712 just to have some sort of a date there of when we did it. and then that comment gives you some guidance as to what all this gibberish down below means from an analysis perspective. So without looking too far into the code, I think a lot of you know, understand how this code works. And but what's nice about ACL, and like I said, is you can start to understand what's going on behind the scene of ACL. So, you know, stratify on check amount. Okay, I'm going to use that check amount field and stratify on it. Subtotal check amount, that means I'm going to accumulate the check amount every time there is a new strata. And then we have a free, which means we're going to set what those strata are, 0, 100, 1,000, etc. And I'm going to do this to my screen, which is what we did. You know, we ended up doing that to our screen. Then with that paid file open, you know, we also then extract the whole record if the check amount is greater than that average one to a file called above average invoices, and we open it up. That's what that open is. So again, I don't want to go through every one of these, but you can very quickly start to understand what ACL is doing, and it's really not that hard. I think once you understand how the dialog boxes work, to then relate that back to how the script works. So let's close the script. It's going to save that. And now, you know, what I can do is, because I would delete the log, but let me hold on to it. I'm going to create a new session, and I'm going to call it testing 2-minute script. And that's going to be my testing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that script. And look at that. I mean, just within a couple of seconds there, notice we started in the log right about here. It went through and ran every bit of that code and produced all the results. And if I want to go back and say, okay, that statistic command, what happened in there? I could double click on it, has the results. Stratify command, double click on it, has all the results there. And then those two files we created, above average invoices times 2 above average invoices, we can open those up, and those look the same as what we had before. So that is kind of the building of a script.